Let me just give you some general announcements. One is the format of the meetup. It will be in English. Otherwise, it had to be in Spanish because I don't speak Romanian. But we want to have this as a conversation, not very, very formal. That's why the arrangement of this. So we invite you to have questions as we go. For those that might feel a little bit not so courageous to go, there is a code that will be appearing at some point here to submit questions through Slido. There. See?
Nice.
We're a team already. And, well, you see this event is being videotaped so that you might be soon famous. And at the end, we'll have some refreshments where you can meet up close with our guests today. So let me start by introducing myself. You already know that I don't speak Romanian. So I'm Alejandro Díaz Ortiz. I will be moderating this. I will call it animating this conversation. I'm the Chief AI Officer at Creatopy. And a few words about me. My background is in physics and mathematics. And before joining Creatopy, I worked for Creatopy here in Oradea. I work as a materials scientist in several research labs in the US, in Mexico, in Germany. Then I switched to informatics, scientific informatics while I was in France. And today I'm really, really happy to be here at Oradea Tech Hub.
Can you keep the mic up?
Yes, or the voice. Okay, very good. I will keep the mic up. Sorry. Thank you for telling me. I was saying that I'm very happy today to be here. And before I present my guest, I have to say that when I was invited to do this, the person who invited me was so surprised that I immediately said yes, you know? That she was prepared for me to struggle a little bit. I don't know, I don't have time. But when I saw the topics and the speakers, say, well, how could I say even to put no? Because I always wanted to know about NFTs, about the Metaverse, and I wanted to hear it from the experts. So without further ado, let me introduce to you Denisa Osacenco. Did I pronounce it right?
Hi.
She's a Metaverse architect. She's a concept designer, VR developer, and co-founder of the Point Lab. And at the moment, through the Point Lab, Denisa is focusing on defining what the Metaverse architecture can be and how to translate from well-established architecture design ethics into this platform with the aid of artificial intelligence and sustainability as the main criteria for the projects. And to her left is Timmy, this is very difficult for me to pronounce, Ghiurau? Ghiurau.
Nice.
Close enough. He's an innovation leader at Volvo Cars and a co-founder of the Point Lab. Timmy's focus these days is on futurist thinking, innovation management, and building, and leading and investing on teams that bring creative and engineering focus together. Now, before I go into the next point, which is about the Point Lab, let me say that these two bios don't make you justice. After talking to you, and I think they are missing, these are about the end point today. They're missing the journey. And if you can tell us a little bit the journey, how you arrived to the point you are today, you know, at Volvo, at the Point Lab. Who wants to go first?
Do you want to start with Volvo?
I can start. Yeah, so I left Oradea, I think, 12 years ago. When I finished high school, I moved to Copenhagen I wanted to be an artist. That was my dream. But that was not, when reality hit me, I saw that was like a difficult thing. And I decided to go and study engineering, and I was fortunate enough to meet the really creative people, and in Copenhagen there was this really fertile soil for innovation, and that's the first time where I learned that it's okay to also try to be creative, also focus on technology, be a nerd. So I went through a lot of companies. I started with the Unity founders in a basement in Copenhagen, and now Unity is like a multi-billion company, and
Great.
80% of the games are made in Unity. And after that, I worked with some startups with eye tracking, research, Lego, building games. And I was never a car person. I remember when my dad tried to convince me, hey, let's kick the tires, let's open the HUD, let's look at the engine. But I was like, yeah, Dad, but I like guitars and music, so I don't care about cars. But then when I learned about Volvo's vision, like the freedom to move in a safe, sustainable, and personal way, and their focus on safety, and that if I build simulations, create environments, work with technology that can save lives, and you multiply that by 5 million cars or so, and the scalability, that made me fall in love with the industry. And after that, of course, like getting to be an innovation leader and work a lot with the future, I also felt that there are so many other things that I used to love before, like fashion, architecture, design, that I was not really able to do them at Volvo. Hence, when we started talking, and we'll cover that later, we saw that convergence between what we were doing, and that's where we started the point, that intersection point. So that's a bit of the short story, but the rest I think I covered in other podcasts and conferences and so on.
Okay. A bit about my background. I've started everything with architecture since high school here. It's been my dream to be this big architect, looking at all these star architects then, that I was imagining maybe one day I can get out of Oradea and be that. And then I realized I don't think I can do that in here. Not with the programs were available then, and what I imagined to do, because I was reading a lot then about tech and solutions and how much is integrated and is going to integrate in this discipline of architecture and design. And around 18, I think I just turned 18 and I left the country. And that's when I kind of started my academic journey through architecture, but in a very traditional way. Everything that I had to deal with, the intersection with art and design, and how it's this mingle between technical part and the beauty of creation, was amazing. And then I realized that reality hits, and you need to go into internships, and it's always, especially in the UK and London, it's crazy. It's like 20 people in one spot, and even that, it's underpaid anyways. That's a different topic.
Yes.
And then the pandemic came as well, and anyways, I was very interested in this idea of software development and VR, and how can that be implemented into architecture. But it was just tapped into then, and kind of I had time to sit back and just learn those engines that I was not given as an option in school. It was kind of like, you need to learn to do this. But I was like, why? Because it's unlimited. The moment you understand the tools, that's when you become the creator. So if you're taught only one tool, that's all you know your whole life. So you're limited. And from there, I started working with a lot of open-minded architects and artists and innovator and, these interesting open-minded people, and started in Austria. Again, loving to travel everywhere to see what's new and how to get out of your comfort zone. And there became the architectural lead and design there for concepts and VR development. And then we intersected our ways and talked about the point and the dreams and everything, which we are going to cover now. And we started doing all this that we're going to talk.
Just before we pass, because I think it's for women in general, in a leading position in tech, it's a little bit hard. For you, what's...
That's a good question. A bit
maybe,
sensitive.
Maybe for a different time.
No. We were talking about this before, and especially like female roles in tech and IT and any like huge, like important positions are always less examples, especially from Romania. Like when I was in high school, I didn't had only these big star architects like Zaha Hadid that I
Yes.
could look at, but then the ethics and everything that's behind, you know, it's always a questionable area and gray. Because it's like, why are not more women represented in this? But luckily enough, in the past few years, it became very different, especially in Sweden and in Nordic countries. You can see it's actually more women in tech than men, which is, no one knows that. But actually, it's like the opposite of it, which is absolutely amazing to have this today. So, sorry, guys. Let's go, girls.
Very good. So you're leading regression to the mean from the north.
Yeah, so...
Right? But then the Point Lab happened, right? You're a co-founder of
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
lab with Timmy. You're there.
Very proud of our baby.
Yes. Tell me about it. Tell me about this, the Point Lab. What is it? Why even the name, the Point Lab? Can you start from there?
That's the point.
Very good. Very good.
I can't sell it any other way. We were thinking about this name, and we're like, you know, the point is to do this. The point is to explain this, and we're like, we keep hearing the point coming in the conversation, and we're like, but that's what we are trying to do. We are that point, that intersection. If you can see what's on the screen as well. It's something that we were talking and put it as a fundamental part for our company and for the lab and incubator that we have. This is the Krebs cycle of creation? Yeah, creativity, sorry. From Neri Oxman from MIT, architect and biologist. And it's the intersection between art, science, design, and engineering. And the same as we have innovation and tech introduced into it, and we are that little point in the middle to enable dreamers and creating the day of tomorrow, kind of.
You touch many points there, and we
No,
probably
I'm sorry.
need a lot. No, but it's very good. It's very good. By the way, if you have questions
So far.
at this time, it's a good moment. So far, so good. Okay, let's continue. I said you touched many points there, and let's go over one by one, right? And for instance, you said this point where this intersection with innovation. Let's start with innovation, because innovation is an important topic in this.
Yeah, so as Denisa said, a bit of a backstory. The way we started to interact, I think we started on Instagram once. Like we were commenting on, I think we were commenting on this picture actually. And then we're like, hey, you're from Oradea, I'm from Oradea. We kind of known about each other for 12 years. But then we also started talk about Vario, and I was surprised that somebody from architecture and kind of from Romania knows about Vario, the VR headset company, which was quite new and innovative. And when we were talking, and we said, hey, let's actually have a call because this gets interesting. The first time we had a call, we were talking for 6 hours or so about like art, design, engineering,
Only
innovation. Yeah, we were like just going on, and then it's like, wow, that's like exactly what I have in mind, but I came from automotive, which is a conservative industry, and you come from architecture, which is a super conservative industry. And I knew at that time, EU Commission asked me if like, can you come up with an idea of setting something on the model of MIT Media Lab in Europe, because the whole ecosystem is really fragmented. Like there are some headset makers or like hardware makers in Germany, in like Finland and so on, and then some software companies like Unity or other studios around Europe. But it's really fragmented. There's no standards, no collaboration. And they felt a bit intimidated. They didn't want to say it, but I mean, reading between the lines, they're like, hey, Facebook or Meta is coming in Europe, and they put 10,000 jobs on the market on AR, VR, and Metaverse in Europe, in our backyard.
Yes.
How do we, not prevent, but how do we work around it? Or like, can we come up with new standards, new policies, new legislation? Can we form this lab that it kind of facilitates B2B2C, like where big industries can meet up, collaborate with academia, and work with small studios and startups to kind of help both the creative sector, like museums, culture, that suffered a lot during pandemics, and also the technology development, like how do we intersect these technologies, like how do we find this emergence. And by following this model, we are looking at how can we look at nature and through science convert that to knowledge, and from knowledge to engineering to convert that to utility, from utility through design to nudge behavior, human behavior, like through user experience. And that, if we zoom out a bit on a city scale, society scale, how can we change culture, or not change, but preserve, for instance, culture through art, but with the aid of technology. And that intersection kind of made the point. So we have collaborations with University of Arts in Berlin, some museums in Helsinki, work with Alvar Aalto Institute and the heritage there, with Vario, with Unity. So we're like trying to be these facilitators as well in making them play together. I think it kind of stopped, I guess. I need to enter my password. Sorry for the Volvo branding. Yeah. And back to your question, like how do we work with innovation? I think we always looked at this intersection between creative thinking and critical thinking. How can we work with abstraction levels, being able to take a few step backs and being able to see how different points connect with each other, and how can we get so close to the problem and look on, combining different things to come up with new solutions and have this develop the critical thinking. And I think in that intersection between the two, that's when innovation sparks naturally. So we need variety of things. That's why from outside, people would say, wow, these are a lot of things, you're not focused. But from the inside, it's actually, we take so many steps back, enough just to see how things connect with each other. So they're not things running in parallel, but intersecting with each other. And main key that probably I mentioned in another talk, you need a box to think outside a box. And there are so many industries like automotive, architecture, public sector, they are really boxy. And we love constraints because that's when you can be creative. Creativity is not about freedom, it is about discipline, learning to work around the constraints you have and coming up with the solutions.
That's a very interesting thing you said, because as you said a moment ago, you work at this intersection, and it reminds me a lot of this concept of David Epstein in Range, right? That you bring concepts from a different field to solve a new problem in a completely different field. Am I understanding this right?
Exactly, yeah, that's exactly the mentality behind it.
So in this, when you talk about innovation methods and the areas that you are that you have on your radar, trends, what are you seeing now there?
Yeah, this is an interesting question because I think for the past year we've been visiting like crazy innovation labs. Like we went to IKEA's innovation lab, Space 10. There's kind of a separate entity in Copenhagen. We went to, they have like Google X, MIT, and so on. And everyone tells the same thing. It's like, dude, there is no framework that works. I mean, if there would be, everyone would read the same book. Yeah, there are a few books and frameworks that can help you structure, but like to actually be super disruptive, it's super hard. That's why we are looking into this model of emergence. It's like setting the right temperature and having the right tools around us that if we pick it up and repeat the same vocabulary that builds a certain culture, or we work with certain values, enabling just for innovation to happen, to spark and see, okay, that's an interesting artifact. How can we, take it from product level to society level to planetary level? Because that's the paradigm shift that it's happening. Like, it's not enough to have human-centric design. We need to do planetary-centric as well, but not excluding one of the other.
And when you talk about all these these different technologies you have in mind, and these two scales where you work on, we're approaching slowly to this, to the substance of this. The way I see it, and maybe correct me if I'm wrong, so you have, on the one hand, you have all this AI that is very big now, that is powering most of, as a tool, you know, as a powering thing, is to intersecting with design and art. And of course, we arrive when we think in design, architecture, to the metaverse. And to me, at the beginning, at least, it was always interlinked with these NFTs. Maybe it's wrong. Can you tell us about it, on this connection on these three topics? But I think I see a connection, but it's, to me at least, from the outside, it's a kind of blurry still. And
yeah, I mean, for that, I think it's important to understand. Let me see if I have it here. To understand the layers of it, like the components of the metaverse, right? And understanding what the metaverse is. We are, I mean, being on the innovative side, I mean, metaverse is a really old concept. It's been, you know, present even, like, I remember these cartoons on Cartoon Network called Johnny Quest. I think they're by Hanna-Barbera in the 60s or 70s. And they were connecting to some sort of chair and VR headset, and they were traveling into some simulations. And that was pre The Matrix. I think it was something that inspired The Matrix. And I was always fascinated, and like kind of they were building their own worlds and dreams there, or like being able to capture some of the dreams and bringing them to reality. And some of those concepts were present in sci-fi or like different literature, sci-fi media. So like the metaverse as a term, probably all you know, that it comes from Snow Crash, like
yes.
the novel. And then, I mean, we have friends that been into that close circle to him. They were like, oh, they were even called themselves Snow Crash, like, and like building, like trying to build the metaverse back then. But I mean, the technology was far off, and we saw like kind of Second Life and those type of attempts, right?
Okay. Yes.
But because of that, there's like so many definitions of what metaverse is, and that's why it's like why
one for every person that you ask what the metaverse is, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
So that's the thing. Like everyone makes it their own because no one owns the metaverse. It's like the internet, right? And for that, it's really important to understand what are the layers, the components of it, and understanding where there is an opportunity for you to build something. Are you on the hardware side? What hardware or like things you can work with? So for instance, if we start with the infrastructure, having an interconnected world or a new internet requires a lot of compute power. But now with 5G and cloud, you know, you can have like pixel streaming, and you can have this crazy 200 million polygon worlds and 3D models that, you know, you can render them somewhere else and you can stream it on a mobile phone. Then you need to understand how to interact with these worlds, and that's where the mobile phones, glasses, VR headsets, haptics, voice interactions are, you know, really, really important. It's like part of the human-computer interface. And then how do you build it, like the decentralization part of it, and that's the blockchain part of it, right, where you can verify ownership. Like I have this house, and it's persistent, and it's mine. Because one of my favorite definitions of the metaverse is actually from John Ricciotello, who is the current CEO of Unity. And he said that like the metaverse, it's kind of a new generation of the internet, which is mostly 3D, mostly real-time, mostly interactive and persistent. And I mean, that's like a really high-level definition. But then, of course, if you apply it to retail, if you apply it to games, if you put the NFT aspect to it, or, you know, like this virtual lens, of course, it can change a bit, because it's like, I don't think there are many metaverses. You can say that Facebook owns the metaverse because they kind of were bold enough to change their name. I mean, to be honest, they changed their name to kind of wash their sins a bit because, you know, Facebook as a name had bad connotations.
Mhm.
Just a second, I have a question.
Yeah,
You said that the metaverse is that metaverse doesn't
yeah,
like internet.
yeah,
But it's not so because they're building on top on blockchain, and it depends on what blockchain are building up on top of it.
yes,
So because every blockchain has its own metaverse, let's say like this.
yeah,
Because on top of it, on smart contracts and on NFTs and so on and so on.
yes,
So basically, it's just centralized.
yes,
Decentralized by the blockchain that, on the point that you are building on top.
yeah.
The
For
only-
now.
Forever.
Mm.
The only one who is totally decentralized is the Bitcoin. The rest of them are all centralized. The rest of the coins. Basically, on every, let's say from Ethereum, going forward to Matic, Polygon, Sand, to Decentraland, they are all centralized, decentralization centralized.
Yeah.
So,
With that, I agree. Like they're proven.
because I told you last time when we changed a few words before about the ethics, and I know that you have that lawsuit with the somewhere. And forget your ethics and try to put that in front of you, where you build your metaverse.
Yeah,
So where on what blockchain you build your metaverse.
yeah, we're getting to that.
Yes.
So
just 1 second.
yeah,
You seem to know each other, but we don't have the pleasure. Your name is
Tudor.
Tudor?
Tudor.
Tudor. Very nice. Thank you, Tudor, for breaking the ice in the questions.
yeah. No, that's a really valid question because there are like, you know, there's so much hype, and that's why we were kind of one of the reasons to have this conversation now. It's like, what's the hype with the metaverse? What is the bullshit part of it, and what are the opportunities? Because there is a lot of definitions that, as I said, you know, like the aspects of decentralization and so on, where it was proven that even on blockchain, actually you had like different addresses pointing, like this one JPEG, it looked different on your wallet, it looked different on OpenSea, and when you actually access the smart contract, it was like completely different. So you could prove that there are still flaws and it's not defined yet. These are like, I think we're at the stage like we were in the 70s or 80s where through the internet we were sending a text and we were celebrating, you know?
Okay.
But because we are not used to those big leaps anymore, because we're making fast iterations every week, it's not even months now, like every time, it's so hard to work in tech and keep especially with innovation, it's so hard to be ahead of everyone else when there's so many new things appearing. But I think where I was trying to get with this is like, I mean, the metaverse, it's not like different metaverses, it's different rooms of it. And there is like the kind of paradox with, yeah, we call it decentralized, but there are like, because of the different infrastructure, who owns the infrastructure, who owns the metaverse, who owns the data, and so on. But where it gets to is like this creator economy, where I mean, there are the tools, the game engines, the 3D engines, like all the, you know, for Figma to define the interactions, data sets with machine learning to train some agents and virtual companions and so on, which kind of builds the whole experience, right? So what's important and what I try to get here is like identifying, because you can't build it all. That's why you need an ecosystem. That's why you need collaboration. And for decentralization to happen, you need standards. You need like this policies and, you know, consortiums like Chronos and stuff like that. They're present in 3D or AI, where you're kind of different industries and companies agree, okay, this is the format we're all going for, just, you know, for the sake of transferring knowledge, transferring data, and, you know, this compatibility.
And the balance, you know, we established that there is no one single metaverse. It will be several ones. But still, we mentioned Meta, we mentioned Facebook, and I was just hearing, just before preparing for this talk, I was hearing what Zuckerberg was saying, that the playbook for the metaverse will be the same that you would use for Facebook, for Instagram, for WhatsApp, and that kind of worries, and probably we'll touch a little bit more at the end. But he says by the end of this decade, I have to have 1 million, 2, 3 millions in users in this, or people, he said people. How important is this balance, you know, because you have a big mammoth, it shifts the balance. And
Yeah.
I don't know if you want to discuss this, or we leave it for the...
I think we can leave it at
for the
end.
big
Yeah,
part, so
yeah,
for the
yeah.
big plus up. So we touch on this. We talk about the blockchain, which is the technology and on underlying all this. We haven't touched yet on the NFTs. You want to go directly to the VR?
Yeah, we can just present, because we're like looking at those components. So yeah, like just a really quick brief of what is virtual reality,
Sure.
augmented reality, mixed reality, because sometimes, I mean, even us in the industry mix the words because there are new definitions. Like I heard other people proposing even other definitions instead of these three, and or like virtuality, or you know, what I found most interesting is like what is the potential with all of this? I mean, some of us heard or tried virtual reality, right? And that's like when you have everything synthetic and you use usually a virtual headset, and everything it's 3D around you, like the environment, objects, and you might be able to interact with it. Then augmented reality, it's more common on mobile phones, for instance. Google Glass, they had an attempt with it, but because of the battery, energy, privacy issues, it didn't fly off. But I know there are like, most of the companies are working on it. I mean, if you just look at the AR kit from Apple, you would see like how much work and how much money they spend on this. But this is more present on, for instance, Snapchat filters, Instagram filters. Probably a lot of you used actually augmented reality. Some people would argue that that's not actually augmented reality because, you know, you need to have object tracking and apply it on object. I mean, on Instagram, you can track your face, and it's quite accurate, I would say. And then mixed reality, when these things are blending. And I mean, I have examples where, you know, being able to interact with 3D interfaces, and for instance, what I did at Volvo with Vario. So this is actually when Adam Savage from Mythbusters, he was in San Francisco with us, testing it the first time. And then we actually took it for a road test, driving with the headset and switching car models. But it got so real where you can actually see your own hands blending with the 3D model, and you pick the 3D object in your real hand, and you see the reflections real time, like the shadows and the lights from this room applying on the surface. And that gives you crazy immersion that your brain, it takes about 5 seconds to adapt. And even if you know that it's not true, you kind of try to negotiate with your brain if it's real or not. And one of the reasons actually why I got into this field is because I was a dreamer and introvert, and I learned the power of it. For instance, if I go to the CEO and I need to show him a car concept, and I put the headset the first time on his head, I need to teach him how to walk, how to touch, so he's a toddler. And then, you know, after he takes the headset off, I'm like, dude, I just taught you how to walk, so let's have a equal conversation. And you know, and that helped me a bit to snap out of, you know, my introvert self, but also understanding like the human senses, like how can you nudge behavior, but also how to create really immerse. Like, I mean, with these things we were saving millions in developing and designing, and it's same in architecture, where before you spend on buildings, you can actually able to simulate different materials, configurations, design, ergonomics, visibility, all these things that usually takes 7 to 10 years to build, and it's then too late to actually make changes. So for efficiency, for collaboration, I think one of our motto is like, if we use the same tools and we democratize the tools, we are speaking the same language. So artists, designers, engineers, by using the same tool, they're able to share knowledge and data easier, so it enables collaboration. And of course, the demand of all these jobs in the past few years was crazy. Like, I think AR, VR engineers in 2019, like it grew 1,400%, the demand for these jobs. So it's more than all the other jobs combined. As I said, Meta on its own in Europe, only 10,000 jobs in Europe on the market. And more companies are looking. So a quick secret is like, I apply for jobs every week. Like, not that I'm interested in them, but I'm trying to understand what other companies are doing and like what roles are, because then I can understand a bit of what are their strategies, you know? But also, what are we worth on the market? And we are talking, should we learn these new skills? Because I saw they put a lot of emphasis on this and this and this, and probably we didn't hear about this tool, so let's try to learn them a bit. So it's really interesting what's out there in the market, and COVID accelerated that with remote work. For instance, in cars and architecture, you can't build a car from Zoom, from home. It's like a super complex product, and it's physical product as well.
Yes.
So we're trying to see how can we bring tools and actually help people understand that we are not trying to replace their jobs, but augment what they're doing and, you know, help with efficiency. And that we do in ambidextrous way, you know, the ambidextrous
Yes.
innovation. With the left hand, it's like, okay, we help you to have more efficient tools to build houses faster, to build cars faster, to build products, to sell them faster. So you trust us for a bit. We use trust as currency. So you leave us alone so we can venture into this art, heritage, culture, or like a bit more Horizon 3 type of innovation, like something super edgy. Because we kind of respect the industries because it pays our salaries and, you know, and pays for all this expensive equipment, so we can experiment and see what would be the future for us. How can we pivot to other things? Do you want to cover something?
You kind of covered everything. Thank you very much.
Yes,
it's
it's kind of
It's usually the other way, like I talk too much, but it's okay. This time I forgive you. Yeah, everything that comes, pretty much what you said, for me was in particular this question always put, are we going to lose our jobs for these spots, and what's going to happen? Oh, you moved. And, you know, like looking at the negative side of this booming technological impact and why, let's say, I'm talking from an architecture perspective, he's talking from automotive, of course, and product design and such, moving from something so traditional as a work, and then you're like, yeah, I'm creating everything in virtual reality, I'm in the Metaverse or stuff like that. It's kind of like, oh, you joined the dark side. And I'm like, no, dude, I'm just, you know, we are developing towards this side anyways. It's about embracing what we have now and taking it to the other level, as long as we're going to talk later about ethics. And where's the line between that good and bad kind of way. So yeah, pretty much like that.
So after I seen this, and it's clear to me why the design part comes into this and the architectural thing, right? You mentioned something at the beginning on these different scales about designs. You said this human-centric and a planetary-centric. Yeah. That's a very interesting idea. Can you tell us more about it? Because you're...
Where are you going?
We're going faster. We're going faster.
Oh my God. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Prepare yourself. Yeah. Everything, anyways, changes every week, so that's amazing. It's kind of this zoom in, zoom out that we have to do, especially when we are building new universes and platforms. And it's the same, how it's called in architecture, the God's complex, because you're the one creating the world.
How about this for girl power, right? You are creating universes. left and right.
That goes a bit too much for some people and lose their minds, but it's not exactly. It's about the limits and the ethics behind it, and how can we empower the new generation about this? How can we take heritage? How can we take the past and what we know already from the ethical perspective of architecture that already, as design models, have been put through? And we have a precedence, and how can we take that responsibly and transfer it into this new step, this new platform, as we said, the Metaverse, as we're gonna talk and develop on that. And it's kind of like what I have on the screen here. It's like the circles, the Bauhaus curriculum from 1920s, and next to it is Design 3, which was coined the word, I think, in 2020 or 2021. And it's kind of looking back and understanding everything that we did so far, learning from our mistakes as well, so we understand not to make them again, even though it's, again, zooming in and out. So kind of looking at your neighbors next to you. We were discussing about this. You know, like, we want to help the people next to us. Let's, I don't know, take the trash and be eco-friendly, but at a small scale. And then you start looking at your city hall and whoever is around you in that town, even though it's a village, and then you move on to your country. How can we solve these problems? The same as using the platforms and the tools that you have today, not taking it as against you, working with you. And then you move on to this planetary perspective. So it's kind of like a lot of people make the mistake of going, oh, I want to help, I don't know, the climate change, but they don't, okay, I'm not gonna swear, they don't care about, the trash next to them, or, how to use water responsibly or stuff like that. But you're telling me about climate change.
Yes.
So it's about this zoom in and zoom out. Start from small and then scale it upper and upper, and it's kind of about that.
And what happens, to add on that, is that people tend to zoom out and stay there. And I think that's why it's important to understand, like, when we're building this, it's like you need to zoom back in to the specific product or something that you can actually have impact on to be able to, oh, the slides are messed up. Okay, whatever. No worries. We don't focus on them. But yeah, like, coming that, I think to build the future, we need new narratives. And we use this method called world building that comes from Hollywood and games. And we have collaborations with people from, that did Black Mirror and Fight Club and so on. And they use this method to predict the future. So it's not to build sci-fi, because if you look how we were telling stories, and actually Metaverse is a fertile soil for new stories, new narratives, new products, new opportunities, new experiences. And if you look in the past, when we were like in tribes, we used metaphors to make sense of things. Like, you were experiencing something, but you had to use metaphors to actually explain to the people around you what you saw, what you experienced, what that object is. And then when the printing press was invented, we got a bit to this static and linear stories. And it affected, books, Bibles, experiences, cinema, media, design, everything is linear. And now, because of the big data, everything being real-time, interactive, we're getting into this circular type of experiences. Like that Black Mirror episode where you can actually switch and select the scene, how it goes, so it's more interactive and circular. And to do that, we're trying to ask the why first, and what if, and get those major provocations, like, what if the future of architecture looks like this and this? What if in the future, instead of spending so much on furniture, we'll have empty rooms and just virtual skins, to customize your walls and so on? Or, questions like that. What if Volvo wouldn't make cars, for instance, and we go to cybersecurity? So we put those questions in, and then we try to define the context. Okay, but where, when, and how? And then the domains. Is it affecting the architecture, culture, infrastructure, policies? And this thing actually works really well. Like, you could think of it as a kaleidoscope. You can look at the world from different perspectives. And it comes back to the origin. You define a character, and that enables you to get to a street corner moment. So when you have the world built like with all these components, you don't need to spend so much effort in telling stories. They just emerge because you have all the factors that can influence, how the stories are coming or the experiences. And that can be used for research to predict trends and the future, because you're creating certain conditions, can go up slightly utopian or really often becoming dystopic just with tweaking one of those elements too much. And that's why, like, if you get that balance, it can help us decouple. So it means that if we talk to the city hall, we can take the designer hat off or architect hat off and think like a city planner or a mayor for a moment. And then they can take the mayor hat off and think like a designer, because they can switch perspectives a bit to understand the problem at hand and actually how different scenarios can look in the future. And that's a bit how we get into this technique, the world building, through design to be able to change a bit of behavior, or not like, to control behavior, but to nudge into, for the better.
We touched a little bit to the metaverse, and when we were talking about the hype, and then we got sidetracked, as often happens in a good conversation. Let's go back to this, to the hype and the metaverse, and I will be interested to know how you use this technique to predict how the metaverse will go into the future, because the problem with the future is that you don't know the future.
Yeah, I mean, of course, we spend a lot on research, and through collaborations, we're asking questions. And I think the main thing is not coming from tech world, we tend to jump into solutions really quick without understanding the question or actually asking the right questions, right? I think that's the key part of it. And I know there is a huge hype of it. Should we care about it? Maybe. Should we not? I don't know. But there are opportunities in it. And we are working with industries that actually we can see already value added to some of these industries, like real estate, entertainment, city planning. I mean, digital twins are sort of a metaverse in some people's mind. I kind of disagree with that in some context. But it can create a lot of values when you have representations from the physical world to the virtual world and vice versa. Like if you're creating content there, and like I've been to Burning Man in Metaverse like some years ago, and I'm an introvert, and I was the same as I'm in real life. I was sitting in a corner, and virtual deadmau5 was there, and I was just banging my head like that. Other people were flying. There were, different type of characters. I looked the same, and I was as shy as in real life. And that comes back to what type of jobs and things are needed in the new era of the internet, right? I mean, yeah, we need builders like architects, designers, UXers, philosophers, people that can create content, people that run businesses, things that you can experience, like virtual concerts, virtual events. I was holding lectures in Meet in VR for 200 students, and they were all there with their avatars. I can draw, I can bring different objects in the virtual class to them. And it was, again, also, I kind of replicated my real-life behavior in the metaverse as well, because I was on stage presenting, having the lecture. Other lecturers, they were just flying from the stage to somewhere in that virtual space. I was kind of going on the side and going around it like I would do in normal life, not to disturb the other people. And that's one of the biggest kind of mistakes that happens when we work with virtual reality simulations and metaverse. We try to replicate reality, like focus on physics, on gravity, when you can actually, I was talking with Marius here, like when we saw the first time, like, that you can flip a car in the air and explode the parts and see the components and, you know, flip it, make it smaller, change the colors, that's kind of the added value that you can do in reality yet or so far, right? So that's kind of the opportunities of it. And for that to happen, we need good facilitators, right? So when pandemic started and Clubhouse was kind of really popular in Twitter Spaces, or like if we would just start all talking now, it would be a mess, right? Like, and people would get bored. They might come to another meetup or not. But with good facilitators and planners, that can be really successful, right? So people will come for more. And it's the same in the metaverse. You go there, and if you have too much freedom, you don't know what to do. Or there are things to do, you don't know how. But if you have facilitators, and that could be real people that actually work there as tourist guides, for instance, or something, or like storytellers, that creates a way different experience, because the whole thing is about community fostering. Like, you can have an audience in the virtual space to be more global and interactive, or you can kind of have it replicated or connected in the physical space. So a lot of people kind of do the mistake of focusing only on one audience, you know, so, oh, let's translate our physical audience to virtual. But in reality, to have this sustainable and working as a business, you need both. So one example that we work with is a platform that we have a collaboration on. We work now on a Metaverse platform in Dubai for real estate people, where you as a realtor, you have your virtual office, and you can sell contracts, like real buildings and apartments, but you can experience them before. Then also retailers, like if you have like a private jet company, you can show them there. And the reason we chose Dubai, it was a bit, we were not that excited because it's not really in our values and style, that type of business. But we have this theory, like self-driving cars, if they don't work in California because the policies, the infrastructures, the road, the culture there kind of makes it happen, it will never work. And the same with Metaverse, if it does, and NFTs, if they don't work in Dubai because of people's mentality and the way, you know, like kind of the showing off type of thing, it won't work anywhere. So we found it as a good testing ground, but also a good way for us to see, okay, we really saw that that's a desert, literally a desert and spiritually kind of land, right? So we're like, how can we plant some seeds talking about ethics and values that, again, to the point we have certain vocabulary and values that we emphasize, like aesthetics, dynamics, sustainability, privacy for data. And we were keep repeating them in such a fashion that people's collaborators and partners started to use the same words in media, in the press, but they made it sound that it's their own, right?
Yes.
And then we were like, wow, that, you know, we planted small seeds and they were actually listening, you know? So even though, of course, now it might be only words, but those seeds can translate to action and to a more ethical type of running business. And another one is Cornerstone, which it's my favorite Metaverse platform. It's done by Zoan Studio in Helsinki. They had a collaboration with Vario. And it's more photorealistic. It uses pixel streaming, so it works on mobile. And first week they came out, they put some land for sale. So see, the Metaverse, you can fly. In reality, you wouldn't be able to fly like that. You can have museums or different spaces in the sky or in the clouds or in this kind of Icelandic type of island. And it has really interesting principles. It's they're trying to see on, because, you know, there's also this controversy with NFTs and blockchain that is not sustainable and how the energy is consumed and so on.
Yes.
And they're trying a different approach with this one. And we really liked the way they put their values. I mean, they were having a Nightwish concert on this island thing, and there were 200,000 people that were able to be present at that virtual concert. And because of the metaverse, of course, you can use visual effects and make it even more immersive. So if you've been at the Coldplay concert, you saw that they use a lot of fireworks, lights, or Pink Floyd, they had lasers in the 80s. But in the metaverse, you can actually experience even more, like things that even can improve your experience through the sound, through the visuals that you have.
Well, you have a new set of rules, right?
Yeah.
That brings, let me ask you a question. Like, do you really think that this metaverse is something that we cannot avoid, that this is happening? It's not an if, but when?
Yeah, I agree that it's a when and not an if.
An if.
Or maybe it will be probably in different forms. I mean, not necessarily what we imagine now. As I said, we're really at the beginning of understanding the components of it or what the value might be. But I mean, I'm just looking at the progress of technology, like moving from super big computers to laptops to mobile phones, and we see the computing power that it's increasing.
Mm-hmm.
And we always needed something more interactable, more like bigger. We had like those chunky big Nokias and Sony Ericssons and so on, and we're getting to smaller ones. But then the iPhone came, and then they started to be bigger again and bigger because we needed more screen space for, you know, different tools or video or like, you know, having these phablets or how they were called, just for work, related stuff or just entertainment. So we see these cycles in technology, and if you look at the cameras and the patents that all these companies like Apple, Samsung, and LG and Sony are doing, they're not adding more cameras for bigger, better pictures right now. We see LiDAR scanners, and LiDAR is this technology that kind of enables you to scan objects and environments and translate them to 3D objects through point cloud. And it's the same technologies we use in self-driving cars for them to make sense of the environment. I think I will just close the presentation.
Unless you have something, because we're touching the point of, we said you have a new set of rules, and we're coming to the point of the ethical part that we touched at the beginning, that we put to the end. I think this is a very important thing, because if you have no rules, you have no, in this new verse, in this metaverse, that might change, because we are a protocol evolution that is very, very long, and you mentioned also the constraint, how constraints are important. You're set free. How this ethically, sociologically for the society happen? I mean, what are the implications that you see now?
I just want to have a quick comment. We were talking before that every time we talk about metaverse, we have these rudimentary technical problems. Like I just look at the screen behind, and it's showing like, yeah, but I think I like it like that now, because it just proves a point. Yeah, we often talk about these complex future scenarios and future technologies, but we struggle to have a Zoom call or, you know,
yes,
my computer to work properly. But yeah, on your point, I think I was mentioning on a previous talk last week that, I mean, usually the talk, the title I use is Snap Back to Reality, Here Comes Gravity. And yes, it is an Eminem lyric, but it has different connotations for me, because we are dreamers and we work with these virtual technologies, but then when you work in a corporation or work with public institutions, that's when gravity hits you, and what's on paper, what's in research, or on a theoretical sense, doesn't really work as it should sometimes. Or what if people will be so immersed and they will spend so much time into these virtual technologies that they will forget how to be human, or, you know, they forget that they have a kid crying next to them, or, you know, stuff like that. So we're trying to see, to kind of understanding the human mind, how to find those loopholes, so we actually deliberately insert them like kind of this Easter eggs, that when people interact with them in these virtual spaces, they snap back. They're like, oh, there's a dissonance there. And like the friend that we told you about, like Carlos, Mexican as well, he's like a really big expert in cognition and AI. And We were having a debate at the VR days in Amsterdam, similar panel, and we're talking about this cognition and the human mind and the stimuli that we get from all these things, like visual stimuli, haptics, smell, taste, and all these things. And usually we don't really need all of them at once to actually have an immersive, or our mind to be tricked that there is, something happening to us. Like the first time I was trying this Tesla suit, haptic suit, there was Darth Vader in virtual reality cutting me in half, right? And I knew it's not real, but I was still negotiating with my brain that, hey, you actually felt the burn and you saw him and it hurts a bit. So I was tricked a bit, even though I knew it's not real, my brain was still processing that. Or every time I'm showing somebody a virtual car, they duck because they don't want to hit their head. But there's nothing there, So it takes just a bit to change people's behavior like that. And I wonder, like, if it takes just a bit to change it in a bad way, can it take just a bit to nudge it in a good direction? But that's kind of subjective and a big debate around it. What is good and,
What is bad?
like on a societal level. Yes. But that's why we're trying to always zoom in back to a product, an artifact, that people can reverse engineer and kind of, I interact with it, I get an experience, and this shows me a direction, that I can take, So that's kind of the nudge that we're trying to do. And of course it has implications on society, and I think that's where there's a lot of work. That's where we are trying to advise and have strategies and have like really cross-industry, cross-culture type of collaboration, because we're trying to understand what can we do, as you mentioned, at a city level, at the country level, when it comes to policies, legislations. I will say something controversial now, but when I was in San Diego at the UX conference at CAI, we were presenting a paper, and I was talking a bit about augmented reality. And that was like maybe 6 years ago. iPhone barely could handle a bit of AR. But with the technology back then, I was able to recognize all the Asian people in the room and blur them out. And I just showed it to prove a point, and the audience had this shock moment, and it was like, oh, that's bad. And I said, yeah, it's bad, but it's possible now with this basic technology. But what if in the future I'll wear glasses and I can blur, I don't want to see you, or I don't want to see the audience because I get intimidated, so I can remove them. Or let's say that we talk now and an ad appears on your face, and I was like, I need to wait till I can talk to you again, right?
Yes.
So those are a bit the ethical problems that we're trying to push so much till we get scared of them, and then it's like, okay, we need to go back with the lessons learned and package something, go to executives, policymakers, and say, well, this is a danger, so can we do something now so we don't get in the same spot as we did with social media? You saw maybe Social Dilemma. So Metaverse, imagine that on steroids, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's what we all imagined when they rebranded. Timmy, I think I can talk. Oh, there's a question. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks so much. On the point of ethics, I actually have it. One, I was wondering if in your team you have an ethicist who focuses specifically on these topics, or if it's somehow connected to something that's cross-cutting that you guys, both of you, try to handle, right? Because I'm just wondering, I think the intention is good, I just think that it requires a certain skill set, right? And then the second point I wanted to ask is about the ethics, because I think that what you're saying hints to the fact that you feel that it should be embedded, so it should be ethics by design, right? I don't want to assume that this is what I'm hearing, and however, do you think that that's enough? Because, so you would agree that you need something that is statutory, right? That goes beyond and it's policy-making kind of level, right?
Yeah, that hence the model that I showed before with world building, because that gives us the holistic approach and understands that if we have this component, it might imply this on a societal level or with policymakers, but for us designers, it gets reduced to pixels and content. But for them is to other aspects. So that's needed. Hence the cross collaboration aspect or cross domain aspect of what we try to do. We try to incorporate. That's why we collaborate with different institutions or have people with us that we learn with in different projects, and ethicists, philosophers. I was working with Volwin, forming the team. I mean, we had theologians, philosophers, because they're really good at abstract thinking. They can take complex things to digestible bits that the rest.
That's kind of the background you would need to become
Yeah,
an ethicist. So
yeah,
it's not
exactly.
enough, right?
Yeah. But I agree, it's not enough. But we need to kind of put pieces together. We still didn't figure out what will glue everything together because, different cultures. I mean, with that model, we learned, okay, what is safety in Jakarta? What is safety in Sweden? What is domestic safety in Sao Paulo? And what is domestic safety in Detroit? So it's like...
I have a third one on this, and I'm sorry because of the ethics, because I think about the potential, of, for example, VR is amazing, right? Not only even for non-gaming services, education, healthcare, so on. It's really unbelievable. However, it's technology. It's also super risky. Exactly like you said. Even leaving the sustainability, so let's say the environmental risk aside, socially, minimum mental health and privacy, like you said, because these are the ones from social media, and then you put them on steroids, right? This is why I was asking about the ethics by design, because it's, the way I'm hearing it, it seems like the sector has this, yes, we're trying to pull people in the conversation, however, if the development kind of runs a bit along, then we're going to make sure that they're pulled in to kind of catch up.
Yeah.
So you see, and this, don't you think that there is a difference between this kind of a posteriori reaction, like look what happened, social media developed, right?
Yeah.
You have, and of course people are trying now to kind of catch up with that, but I think we all know the difference between mitigating and or preventing them, right?
Yeah, but that's why we're having consortiums that define standards and policies now, not to have it pre, not post something. So before understanding what it is, before just jumping off, we are starting from the cultural sector, education, defining curriculums in master programs and so on. Then with industries, we have conversations. This is the missing gap you have. This is the opportunity. As I said, with left hand, we help you with efficiency, but let us, incorporate these elements in, or, define some standards. It's not only for collaboration, but actually to make it in a safe way. But of course, it's never enough, and it's too complex to actually have a bunch of people tinkering about it and trying something. And that's why I back to what you were saying before with Meta, I had these conversations with some of my colleagues, like the ones from the Snow Crash group. They were so pissed that, oh, Meta says that this is the Metaverse, but that's not true because we were, hipsters. We knew about Metaverse before it was cool. And it's like, yeah, but that doesn't matter because your grandma knows that that's the Metaverse because Mark Zuckerberg said it so. And at that scale, that's what it is. It doesn't matter that some researchers in an unknown lab in the basement of something, they try to define or work on something. So it is always the power of scale. And that's why need a bit of also European competition or alternatives to actually to balance it. Yeah.
Yes, this is very, very important. I think we could talk for days. I really like talking for days, but I want to take more questions from the audience. If I know they are, because you've been timid, perhaps. I know for experience that I'm never that clear, so it could be that, that I'm never that clear in explaining. There must be some questions. No? Not Tudor?
Where are the history?
The what?
Here.
We didn't bring...
We weren't allowed to bring them in the country. They were like, they're too advanced. What the hell is this? So okay, I'm sorry. It's cool. Nah.
So next time or next year, bring them on and let's take a taste of that.
I see David here from from Make It and Oradia Hub, and we're like talking about setting a space also with Marius, like where we bring some equipment, because people can't see the opportunity if they don't intersect with it.
They cannot
Yeah.
see the metaverse as the dream alive. As
Yeah.
you're sleeping and you're dreaming and you're doing shit in your dream, it's the same fucking thing that you're into when you're in the metaverse. That's
Pretty much.
Yes. That was very clear, right?
Yeah.
Don't know what it is, should watch Ready Player One. I think.
Yeah.
That is the most close movie that can show you what is metaverse.
That's in our curriculum where we interview and hire people. They need to watch that movie.
At least at gameplay level, not on development, on everything else.
See,
Because as you said, you can take the car and smash it away, take the parts, and the engine, everything. You can dismantle it and change the paint. You can do also in the real life that same thing, but it will cost you like maybe 2 weeks or 3. But on that one, it's like in half an hour, 1 hour.
faster,
Few
instant.
seconds
Yeah.
sometimes, right?
On how much down on the rabbit hole you want to go.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
what I like.
But getting back to what you're mentioning, I think we often think that it's like a new concept, but you know, there's that saying that everything is a remix, right? So as I showed all those layers, I mean, Metaverse, it's a bit of XR, a bit of gaming, a bit of this and that. And I know people, like, coming a bit back to NFTs, maybe as a transition, I know a lot of people had hard time to understand what it is, and they were gamers, and it's like, well, I know you, and you played World of Warcraft for what, like 8 years, and you built your character forever, and you invested actually time and money in those skins and clothes and so on. So let's say that there is a new similar game. Wouldn't it be cool that you transfer your avatar? That's about decentralization and so on. Like, you transfer your avatar and all your items that you built for 8 years, your identity in the virtual space, and you translate it to another meta platform or something, right? And for gamers, it's not necessarily something new, but sometimes when we work with this, we saw it with real estate people. We made also a web version, and we assume that everyone knows how to use instinctively like WASD, because for controlling characters, you would use that. But these people that we work with, they type like this on their keyboards, you know? So, you know, it's the user experience is key here, like having a flawless experience. And for that, we use this framework called MDA. So we looked at mechanics, dynamics, and aesthetics. And that's how we try to translate things from one domain to the others. Like, what are the rules to play? How do they translate to this new other interface? How do they apply to this new sector? And just try to remix them in a more interactive, more immersive way, I would say.
Thank you.
Do you think that this is, let's say, out of the box question? Do you think that what is building Jules will work on, I don't know how you call it, I forgot. But is building a blockchain to sustain the AR, VR thing also?
I think, I mean, the idea,
You saw that?
yeah, the idea is not bad, but I think it's like still at the niche level, because also VR, AR, it's at the niche level, but
You would eat a lot of VR, a lot of RAM, and video cards and that. And the thing is, when you're building and you're making movies, let's say for Hollywood, or for you even for the people, right? Because in the next few years you won't go to the cinema in real life, you will go to cinema in Metaverse with your head here on the head, and that will be that. And that is eating a lot of video memory. So I think it's
and that actually also connects to the sustainability aspect, because like on energy consumption, I know there are numbers, I think we're accounting like all the streaming platforms like Prime and Netflix and YouTube and Facebook videos, I think in total there are 12% of the whole world energy, and by 2030 is projected to 35% or something like that of the world energy. And we don't think about it. We're like, yeah, I just stream it from my phone and I charge my phone. But back to that, to what you mentioned also with the headsets, just because it's happening somewhere else, maybe in South America or under the ocean, doesn't mean that it's not consuming as much energy. And that's why we see this getting back to the hype and kind of, if you look at the articles, there is a bit of downtrade, a trend on Metaverse NFTs, and the whole stock market crashed and so on. And it is a bit correlated to the energy and so on. So we are in what it's called the kind of Metaverse NFT ice age. And I think that's why we're using this time to build things, not hibernate, but build things in the ice age to, when the spring comes, to be ready or pioneer in some areas.
Very nice. As I said, I think I can talk to you but I'm feeling more for the questions. Maybe we can close up here and yes, right?
Yeah, I'm sorry for
Feminine
that.
common sense. Thank you, Denisa. There is some refreshment. We can continue the conversation there. I just want you to summarize. Just going back to Simon Sinek. You told us about the what, the NFTs, the Metaverse. Tell us about how. All these technologies. And if you can just leave us with the why in one sentence, so that we can have this take-home message from this hour that we spent together. What would that be?
That's a tricky one, but...
That's why it's the last one.
Depends from which point you're looking, but I think I could summarize it like, why? Because this is happening and this is the next generation. If we don't make the standard now, someone else will do it, and it can go wrong. And that's where the ethics are going to come in. So just take it in, make your dreams come true, and make a better day tomorrow. And I think that's going to happen through this.
Do you agree, Timmy? It might be a double take here.
No, yeah, it's like we need to seize kind of understand the opportunities, because it's better to, in my mind, in everything I did in the past, I always preferred to risk and be a trendsetter, pioneer. Like, even if it fails, I'll try it. But it is really important to understand and never lose sight of the why, because if you forget why you're doing what you're doing, no matter how noble it is, that would kill you, So it's like if you don't remember the why, like your motivation, like for instance, for us is like a mix of, we want to be innovative, we want to kind of package some values, create like good experiences, democratize tools, make these things accessible for creators, because we do think that the world needs more creators in it. I have this t-shirt made by a friend, created to create, and I think I use that as a motto in a way, because I do believe in this kind of like that every dream, and as the point started with us dreaming, that requires discipline and understanding the purpose. And for us, the purpose was to be able to intersect these areas in such a way that it can, create a better culture, but starting small. Like, often ask people when I teach, like, okay, what's your dream and why you're doing what you're doing? And they're like, I want to go to Africa and build schools. And I asked them, when did you hug your mom the last time? It's like, yeah, me and my mom, we don't actually talk to each other. It's like, yeah, but if you don't do that, you don't have the guts to actually see what's on the other side, or actually travel for so long and have that endurance and, just fight for it, like fight for the dream and build that. So always start local, like, work around your differences and problems and actually try to understand the motivation, the why, what gives you that energy and passion to do it. for the metaverse itself, the why, it is, as Denisa said, it is around the corner. And we were talking just before for the presentation that, yeah, as any other tool, we need to own the tool, not the tool to own us. And the tools are not bad, but they can be used for good and bad. They can be used for entertainment, they can use for productivity, for prosperity, to build societies, to build culture, to build entertainment. But I think it's really important to understand, like, what does it mean for you? Is it relevant in your profession? Can you transition to something modern? Not being threatened, and for instance with AI and like these trends now with Midjourney, DALL-E, where you just write or say a sentence and then it generates art. And people say, well, that's not art. Well, you know, learn how to work with it and get inspired, get some ideas, and then you can create art out of it. Or, you know, we were trying with this Dubai Metaverse to actually generate the whole mood board through AI. Like we just said, we need a future 2050 mall in Dubai, you know, super luxury in the style of Zaha Hadid, and then you have something. Yeah, and then that, it's not necessarily that we use that end product, but we use it for inspiration, and then we'll create something in those lines or so on. So it's always important to understand, to learn how to live with technology, because as you know, we were talking that till a few hundred years ago, we were focusing, like after Renaissance, on human-centric design products and so on. And I think now, as the technology is so embedded in our life, I think we need the new Renaissance moment, you know, like where these things converge and we're understanding the why at a better scale, you know, like the purpose for, you know, what we are doing. Like why do we need more time? Because we always say we need to make things more efficient to buy more time. And I had this question once. I mean, I was working with self-driving cars and we did this research, and we saw that when people have time and the cars are driving themselves, they start to scroll on Instagram. So I was like, oh, we spend millions so people can scroll on Instagram, you know, instead of spending time creating and using it in other ways, or like, you know, venturing into something. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Timmy, Denisa. One round of applause for our speakers. And you know where they are, the refreshments. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.